Okay, welcome everybody. We have a wonderful guest today. She is a fountain of knowledge about physical mediumship. She is at Lilydale, and she actually has a seance room out there, and I was privileged to sit there for one of the transfiguration seances that she had held out there. And she's written, I think, 8 or 10 books. She was trained at Finley, and she is actually doing training now for SNU. So she is quite invigorated, and she's a fountain of knowledge about physical mediumship. I'm anxious to hear what she has to say.
Talk about the book. I might speak a little bit how I got involved in all of this. And I started going to the Arthur Finley College, and I first started with the mediumship courses, and then I became interested in the trance courses because we don't normally offer trance courses in the United States. So I figured I'd do something that we didn't get too much here. And the trance quickly moved into my being interested in physical mediumship because I was in a group here in Lilydale that Neil Zipkowski ran for a long time, many, many years. We sat for physical together. And then we started finding that there was some workshops or conferences in England about physical mediumship. So Neil and I went. We went to one that was sponsored by the Gordon Higginson Foundation. For some people, this is easy. For others, it's not so easy. And you need to do these kinds of things to help you with your own spiritual progress. And as you progress spiritually, you can begin to develop the skills to create physical phenomena. And of course, it takes time. Although, as we know from historical accounts, physical mediums appear many different ways. So it's not just sitting in a room for 10 years to develop phenomena. Some people, it happens almost automatically. So I try to explain all of these things in terms of what is physical phenomena, how do you become a physical medium, and how do you sit in a circle. So I have chapters on all these things. But more relevant, I think, is the idea that today in culture, because I have a chapter on physical mediumship in culture, and today in our contemporary culture, we tend to know about physical mediumship from television shows or films. And the films that come up the most often are Ghost, which is a film which actually does express spiritualist ideals because it is a spirit who's come back to try to warn his wife about possible dangers. So it is from love that the spirit comes back, which is how we do any kinds of phenomena. It all works on the foundation of love. But then we get films like Ghostbusters, and I have to say Dan I think he's a 5th generation spiritualist. His father's written a wonderful book about spiritualism in their family and in Canada, which explains it. And the term ectoplasm did come from spiritualism and Dan's awareness of spiritual concepts and ideas. However, when he depicts it in the film, it's not depicted the way it happens in the real world because this gooey substance just appears on all of these cabinets and things in the library in the beginning of the film, and there's no medium. And we know that physical phenomena occurs through ectoplasm that's produced by a medium. And, you know, if you don't know what ectoplasm is, it's a substance. It looks kind of mucousy. It doesn't look very appealing in general. It can go anywhere from a vapor over a medium's face, like a film, to becoming a solid substance that materializes full beings and spirits of deceased people. And in some cases, these materializations have been so real that the participants in the circles have been able to touch them and feel them. In other cases, we know that the ectoplasm is so fragile that if we touch it, it would disappear and go back into the medium. So this substance is a substance that's created a combination of the medium and with with spiritual energies or vibrations that occur. So the two of them can come together to create this phenomena that occurs in a physical seance. But physical mediumship is not just about seeing phenomena in a seance room. It's also something that can happen every day. So the last chapter in my book talks about how we can experience this phenomena on a daily basis. And of course, it's with things like the coins we find. I don't know how many of you have different coins, and the coins usually are either on the heads or the tails, so it's not just random. And when you find these coins or see the coins, you'll think of someone in spirit. So you'll know who the coins are coming from. That's one. Another one that's real common that occurs is people hearing the voice of their deceased loved one after they've passed. And I've had many people come to me and say, you may think I'm crazy, but I swear I heard my husband calling my name and he was dead for 2 months. No, that's very common. It happens all the time. What's not so common is having things like deceased relatives call on the telephone. And I know a number of people who've actually had this happen, who have received phone calls from people in the spirit world. And in one case, a friend of mine received a series of phone calls from his deceased girlfriend. So it's not unusual. And it happened to my friend who lives in England, and the British telecom people told her that they had heard of this also. So Spirit is using all of kinds of the new electronic media, and Sonia Rinaldi, I think, demonstrates this beautifully with her work to communicate with us and bring messages to us. In the old days, and if we look at it historically, we see that we had the typical seance room where people of like mind would get together, hold hands, try to create a harmony amongst the group and invite the spirits in to come and see people in the room. And different relatives would come in and give messages to their loved ones. And this happened in a variety of all kinds of different ways, from writing to materializations to direct voice. And many of these things I have personally experienced. And some of the unusual ones that I've experienced, I've written about in the book as well. Because people who are not mediums have also had these experiences in their lives where they have been, I don't want to say possessed, where spirits have used them to try to communicate messages to their loved ones. There was a woman, for example, who came up to me. She was looking at a picture. I had one of Shannon Taggart's pictures of Warren Kaler extruding ectoplasm from his mouth, and this person came and looked at it, and she became fascinated, and of course her husband thought, oh, this is fake, fake photography. And I said, no, no, no. And then she started to tell me this story about how this man had been in a car accident and died in her arms, and the spirit of this man kind of took her, became part of her, I want to say. He didn't scare her or anything. He just became part of her so that he could communicate to his family several messages because he had passed so quickly. And as soon as he had done his mission of communicating those messages, he left her and he left in peace. And her husband verified everything that she had to say. So it wasn't just her mind. It wasn't her being crazy. And I've had other stories too where people have come up. And this one poor woman, she told me how when she was a child, things in the kitchen used to fly around the room. Well, that's what would happen with the Davenport brothers and the Bang sisters, who were historical physical mediums. Things would fly around the room or move. And her father, who was a minister, thought it was the devil. So he squashed it, which is too bad because this woman actually could have become a very good physical medium if she was exhibiting these types of things without any training at all. So with training, she could have done it. But again, people in our culture today don't understand what physical mediumship is, and they don't understand its relationship to the spirit world, and how in reality physical mediumship is about bringing healing messages to people and about proving the evidence of life after death. So when we look at it in those terms, we see that it's a healing thing. It's something that's positive and something that's good. It's not something that's scary like Hollywood films tell us or try to show to us. And most of the spirits we see in films have some kind of negative aspect to them. But that's the opposite of what it is in a real physical seance. It's not scary at all. It's supposed to be healing. It's supposed to be helpful. And it's supposed to bring people the truth that there is a continuity to life. There is a continuation after this change we call death. So that's what my book is about. It's about setting the right mindset and explaining all the terms and all the definitions to people and trying to dispel some of the things we've seen in Hollywood movies and films that aren't accurate. And I do address all of those things. Do we have questions? No?
Do you have an explanation by doing your research or inner knowledge why, for instance, the precipitated art is not produced anymore? Or maybe there is, but I'm not aware of it. Do you have an explanation for that?
Well, there are people that are doing precipitated art today, but it's not the art like the Banks sisters, the Campbell's brothers. And what's really interesting about spirit art, and some of it can be a form of physical phenomena, like the precipitated paintings are physical phenomena because they were created without human hands touching them. And the people who did them, the most famous ones were the Banks sisters and the Campbell's brothers, which were both in the United States and both living near me. They were actually both in Lilydale.
I know, yes.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that it's an American phenomena, but then when we look at trance paintings, like the work that Jose Medrado does, they're all Brazilian. So all the trance work seems to be coming out of Brazil, and this came out of the United States, and the spirit art originated in England. So I don't know why there's kind of geographic.
A difference because Jose is using his hands.
Yeah, there is, but no, the point is not, there is a difference between trance art and precipitated paintings, but the artists come from very distinct parts of the world. And there doesn't seem to be, I don't think there were any British precipitated artists. I mean, I've heard of some other ones that were on the West Coast of the United States. The people who are doing precipitated art today, it's Hoyt Robinette, and I just was at a lecture this summer in Lilydale where someone was explaining what you do is you take the gel markers, and crayons and different things, and you put them in a box, and you sit with the box, and you try to have the box create precipitated types of work. So there are people that are trying to do it. It's not on the grand scale of the Banks sisters or the Campbell's brothers, but there are people that do it. And Madame Blavatsky also did some precipitated types of work as well. So again, I think it's partially a mixture of people's attitudes, the times, how all the forces that come together to make it happen. You have to have the right combination of things. And Lilydale, of course, is on a ley line too, so that may have helped them as well. And they say the Great Lakes helped them with their work.
And Madame Bolansky, didn't she also have the molded hands in clay? Or was she not the one? Like the hands that were there were clay, blocks of clay, wet clay, and after the seance there would be hands, like a hand print into the clay.
Well, what they used to do is they used to make casts of the ectoplasm hands that came out of the seances so that they had the hand prints of things with that, which is a little bit different. But as I said, there are some people trying to do precipitation today. It's not the same as the Bank sisters or the Campbell's brothers. But again, you'd have to have the right elements. And at that time, remember, what did people do at night? They didn't sit in their own rooms watching television. They would sit around and they would play cards, they would play the piano, they would play music, they would sing, they would hold a seance. So this was like an evening activity that people would do without too much trouble. I mean, it was just a normal thing. But today, it isn't the case. I mean, we're all scattered. Yeah, they were more focused.
Maxime wrote, David the Guide. Yes, I know that David the Guide started with automatic.
Yeah, he did it also. Yeah, he also did precipitated art. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, the Brazilian, but you also have Louis Gasparetto, if I pronounce it well. He's also like a trance medium painter, like Jose.
Yeah.
And of course, you have John of God in Brazil, isn't it? Operating with his hands only. So maybe that's also a form of physical mediumship. I don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure about whether psychic surgery, yeah, it would be like physical mediumship because it is a physical manifestation that happens on the individual. So I haven't explored that yet. That's a good question, though. Good thing to think about.
Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. A physical group on Zoom. I just wanted to let you know that when we were doing experiments with trance groups through Zoom, we did have all kinds of interesting phenomena start to happen through the electronic equipment.
Lovely.
So, yeah, we got all kinds of strange tappings and sounds. And of course, like table tipping, where you ask them whether it's yes or no to show there's an intelligence there, we did that. And we were able to get some answers to some of the questions that we had.
That sounds interesting.
Really interesting. Yeah, and we also got a glow. It's like somebody had like a glow here on the side of their head. There was like an orb.
Yeah.
On the video, and it moved, and you could see the person's face through it at times, and other times not. So we have gotten phenomena. So if you wanted to do physical groups through Zoom, I'm sure that they would find ways to communicate that might not be the traditional ectoplasm ways, but there might be new ways they'd use the equipment.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, be great.
Yeah, that's what I call physical phenomena in everyday life. And where it's also, I haven't mentioned them yet, but where it also comes in a lot is besides the phones, because it does it on the answering machines, it does it on the regular telephones, and obviously can do it through Siri. I know people that have had it come through on computers. It's like apports. Apports, for me, can happen and they have happened in everyday light, in daylight. Things just appear and they disappear as well. I mean, that's physical phenomena, and it happens all the time, but we don't notice it. We don't realize it because we're not in tune, with it. But we see, when you see the butterflies that land on people, we see different signs and different symbols. Then we'll think of a relative or someone we've lost when we see them. And that's, spirit making us aware of the presence of the spirit world. So it can happen in everyday life. It just doesn't happen in the seance room.
Our friend Joe Higgins is collecting stories like yours, Laurie. If you'd like to contact Joe, he would love to hear your stories. because he's particularly interested in the electronic communication that's coming through now. And there's quite a lot of that happening. Our friend Marcus Lang is getting Scrabble tiles moved. Yes.
Wendy, that's not the only person I've heard of that does get Scrabble messages. I have
Right.
another friend who she doesn't even practice mental mediumship, but she has a lot of physical phenomena that just happens around her. And Scrabble messages, the Scrabble letters are one of the things that move, and she also has objects that move around, like different figurines she has on her, like fireplace will move around, or dresser will move around in different arrangements.
So, Susan, what are your thoughts about poltergeist phenomena? Is it physical mediumship, or is it what the skeptics say, group energy?
What?
Poltergeist.
Poltergeist? Well, I think, but let me just put it this way. It's easier when we talk about physical energy. Let me use table tipping first as an example. When people are doing table tipping, there's a lot of people that will say that it's just the physical energy of the people versus a spiritual entity. So what you have to determine, and this is, I think, for anything, whether it's a poltergeist or a table or anything that's moving, is you have to establish the fact that there's an intelligence there. So, and a way you do that is by, you know, for example, with the table, getting the table to say yes or the table to say no. When we did it electronically, it was usually there was the sound or no sound. No sound was no, and then when there was like a series of taps would come through, it would be yes. So then you can ask yes or no questions and have it respond to you so that you can find out whether there's an intelligence there.
Very interesting. Maxine's just raised the issue of macro PK. Are you familiar with this? And what do you think about some of the experiments that have been done with table tipping about macro PK rather than spirit?
Well, again, I think that the tables can sometimes be tipped by non-spiritual entities, but the way you determine it is by proving there's an intelligence there. I mean, if it's just moving, and I've seen, you know, if it's just moving, then it's just moving. But if it's moving with some intention, then, you know, it's not. I mean, if you've got a table that's tipping all over the place, and you'll say, and you go around the table and say, do you have a message for this one or that one and this one? And it's like, no, but then it starts shaking like crazy when it gets in front of that one person. Then you know there's something there. There's something going on, and you can ask it questions. And it's not just an energy. It's more than that.
Angelique had a question about the Ouija board.
I have a funny, okay, it was funny. I was just thinking about the Ouija board because I like to call them spirit boards. I have a friend who's really big into table tipping and Ouija boards, and I'm not that into it. So anyway, we were switching off with groups of people. She was doing the table, the spirit board. So I got onto the spirit board with a group of people. And I sat there and, you know, it started to move. And it was very strange because it clearly, what was his name? It clearly spelled out an unusual male name. And everybody was sitting there going, do you know anyone with this name? And it's like, I did. And so I was like, and then it kept going. And then it did it again. It spelled out the name a second time. And the only thing I could think of was the fact that at the time when it did it, I had a friend who was in the hospital and we thought she was going to pass. And this was the name of her husband who had passed. So he was trying to get me a message about her through it. But it was very strange. So again, if I don't see intelligence, then I don't think there's spirit there. But this was a clear case where they literally spelled out his name twice, and I didn't, try to manipulate the board at all. So.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of the first hour. So I'd like you to perhaps ask people about reviewing your book, Susan. Could you make that offer? And then we could get people who are interested to write their names and email address.
Sure. If anybody's interested in reviewing the book, put your email address in the chat room and I will send you an electronic copy of it. I'd be more than happy to do that.
We'd like to get some reviews happening for Susan on Amazon or any of the other online bookshops.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Craig, would you like to thank Susan, please?
Hey, Susan, thank you. That was wonderful, as usual. And we very much enjoyed that and always look forward to hearing more from you just because you have such a great background and knowledge about physical mediumship. So thank you very much and thank everybody for coming.